just shut up.
Okay.
Do you want me to lock the door?
We do still have possibly 2 people coming, so if you do lock it, if you hear somebody trying to open it.
Cool.
There you go.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this talk, this presentation on astrology and the guardian daemon. How to find and honor the guardian daemon in the astrology chart. It was challenging to wrap my mind around piecing this together because historically and conventionally through modern experience, what the guardian daemon is a very vast topic. And how we find it historically is also a very vast topic. And there are many different methods for connecting with it. There are many different ways and rituals in which one can connect with it. And this talk, this presentation, is looking at how to connect with it through the astrology chart. Then that's different than, say, invocative ritual magic. Although the astrology chart is itself a form of evocative ritual magic, which I hope will become clear as we go through the presentation. So I would like to start by just reading an English translation of the Orphic hymn to the Holy Guardian Daemon. Thee, mighty ruling Daemon dread, I call, mild Jove, Zeus, life-giving and the source of all, great Jove, much wandering, terrible and strong, to whom revenge and tortures dire belong. Mankind from thee the plenteous wealth abound, when in their dwellings joyful thou art found. Or pass through life afflicted and distressed, the needful means of bliss by thee suppressed. 'Tis thine alone, endured with boundless might, to keep the keys of sorrow and delight. O holy blessed Father, hear my prayer, disperse the seeds of life-consuming care. With a favoring mind, this sacred rite attend, and grant my days a glorious, blessed end. The guardian daemon. Know your daemon, for only then can you free your fate. The holy daemon is spoken of a good deal in Western esoteric traditions. I myself am a practitioner of the Tibetan Vajrayana tradition. In that tradition, what we have is called the personal deity, the personal yidam. They are similar in ideas. This is very close to what the daemon means, as it is a type of personal spirit or deity that accompanies one and helps guide one towards initiation and perfection. The personal daemon descends from the wholeness with you. It is a reflection of the good in your soul. It leads one constantly toward their good. There are 2 distinct words we use. Daemon implies deity. That's with a D-A-I-M-O-N. Whereas daemon, D-A-E-M-O-N, which is also a Latin translation of daemon, D-A-I-M-O-N, implies a personal spiritual being associated with oneself. In the course of this talk, we will use the word daemon as we are reflecting on how to find this and use it based on your personal astrological chart, rather than say the experience of a personal yidam such as Manjushri, or for that matter, a personal deity such as Zeus or an angelic being who appears to you and says that they will take care of you and guide you. This is kind of more of an indication of a tutelar deity if something like that happens. The daemon itself can be defined in 3 distinct ways. An attendant power or spirit, a genius, Usually, it can also be defined as a supernatural being whose nature is intermediate between that of a god and that of a human being, or it can be defined as one's own personal excessive enthusiasm, drive, or effectiveness in one's will to do something. The guardian daemon, as a spirit energy, is associated with your soul's work. It's an ephemeral spirit. But if you look throughout history, going all the way back to the time of Zoroastrianism, then you find that the daemon appears in esoteric literature. So although it's hard to define and its experience is very individualistic, it is a continuous stream in esoteric traditions. Here's a picture of Agathoshe, a Greco-Roman deity that has associations with the guardian daemon. In Zoroastrianism, the idea of a righteous spirit that guided the soul, embodying the essence of what a daemon is, was found as the Fravashi. This puts the initial idea of a spirit that personally guards one into written form, possibly as early as the 15th century BC. The Zoroastrian Fravashi shares some key core ideas with the Western guardian daemon, whether it's termed daemon, genius, or holy guardian angel. These features are: they precede and guide the individual. They serve as a moral or spiritual function for the individual. And they are honored or invoked in religious or spiritual practice. Now, even from the symbology of the Fravashi in Zoroastrianism, you see that the daemon is pictured as a sphere or a golden halo, out of which come two wings, that the man or the being or the individual would then ride in his ascent to the divine. The idea that there was a personal non-human guide for the soul became much more fleshed out in a deeper and more meaningful way in the Greek Platonic and Neoplatonic traditions, as the Greeks were prone to do. In the Greek world, the concept of the personal daemon, a guiding spirit assigned to an individual, had its earliest recorded mentions in the ancient Greek literature of Hesiod, a Greek poet from around the 8th century BC. He wrote in his Works and Days that the virtuous men of the Golden Age were transformed into daemons by Zeus to act as guardians over mortals, dispensing wealth and overseeing justice. Then the philosopher Heraclitus, who lived around 540 to 480 BC, and was noted for the fragment ethos anthropoi daemon, often translated as character or fate, proposed that a man's character was his daemon, suggesting an intrinsic guiding force within an individual. But what this guiding force is and how to recognize it was left unsaid. Perhaps it was passed down in oral traditions of the time, which have been lost to us, or maybe it was written in texts that have not yet been rediscovered or analyzed or put together. But we do know that the most detailed and early accounts of a personal daemon that we have a clear guide on is from Socrates. He frequently spoke of the daimonion, an inner voice or spiritual sign that guided his actions by warning him against specific deeds. The daimonion did not direct him on what to do, but instead advised him on what not to do, serving as a form of divine preventative guidance in his life. In the writings of Socrates, a daimonion was a guardian deity, one who kept the human soul on track in accordance with that soul's great work. One has to wonder what his daimonion was doing when it convinced him to drink the hemlock and kill himself. Apparently that was part of his daimon's work. Plotinus, while establishing the doctrine now known as Neoplatonism, further fleshed out the idea of the daemon in the Enneads, particularly in chapter 3.4, or Ennead 3.4. Plotinus suggested that the guardian daemon was not merely an external entity assigned from without, rather it was bound up within our own state of consciousness, or more specifically with the highest level of our soul that we are capable of accessing at any given time. This starts creating the notion that the daimon is intertwined with our intent, our will, and our thinking, that it is a co-emergent part of ourselves, our mind, and our experience. The question then became, how do we gain conversation with this daimon? How do we work with it if that is the case? How do we recognize which thoughts are the guidance of our daimon and which thoughts are chaining us to a wheel of suffering? This correlates to a Tibetan Buddhist concept or teaching of the Chagdud tradition, which identifies that good thoughts are the god or the gods, and bad thoughts are demons meant to drag one down into experience. And good thoughts pull one up into an experience of bliss or joy or happiness, whereas bad thoughts bring us into negative emotions. And so then there's this relationship to like the daimon plays with us that way. The good daimon pulls us towards our goodness, and the bad daimon drags us down into the experience of negative emotions and suffering.
So wait, are there two then? Kind of like a devil and angel on your shoulder kind of?
Yeah. There appears this metaphor of a devil and an angel on the shoulder, one saying good things and one saying bad things. And even in astrology, you can look at finding the good daemon's name or the bad daemon's name through the tradition of Agrippa, which we're not going to cover in this talk. But in that way, you can invoke either one. And that becomes a little bit dangerous, because if you can calculate those names, or when you calculate those names, then you can use them. If you have someone's astrology chart, you can use their bad daemon's name and create a sigil with the bad daemon name and mess with someone that way. Or counterproductively, or rather, shall I say productively, use the good daemon's name and help them out. But we're not going to cover that in this chart and this particular talk. Iamblichus further developed the idea that the daemon in his work, The Mysteries of the Egyptians. He transformed earlier, more abstract notions of divine intermediaries into a concrete, individualized presence that actively guided the soul's reason and the soul's ascent. Drawn on Platonic sources, where figures like Socrates mentioned the guiding daemon, and Pythagorean traditions that viewed daemons as mediators between the human and the divine, Iamblichus reinterpreted these influences through a Neoplatonic lens. He differentiated himself from Plotinus by proposing that the daemon was an actual being, that it was an external being whose purpose was to guide you towards your wholeness, and it wasn't necessarily an inclusive part of your own soul's experience. In his view, the daemon is imparted to us from the whole of the cosmos and the variety of life within it, from every sort of body through all of which the souls descend in generation, and then appears to the descendant soul to help bring them back up through the process of generation into unity with the good. Iamblichus argued that each person possessed a unique daemon capable of facilitating direct communion with higher spiritual realms, and that was individuated for each individual. Therefore, we all have a daimon that is assigned to us. We all have a daimon who is personally responsible for bringing us to wholeness again. Iamblichus spoke of the generation of the personal daemon as a spirit allotted to our souls by their movement through celestial sphere, an allusion to the demiurge of the Timaeus, launching souls into bodily experience. Our souls from the demiurge move down through the spheres, being adorned with garments from each planetary sphere that it passes. And these garments amalgamate into the personal daimon, in Iamblichus's view. As a soul descends into the body, the daimon binds the soul to the body and supervises the composite being arising from it. This composite is what we think of as ourselves, existing here in the world. having experiences, having different things happen to us as we move through the world, whether that is accidents or whether that's our preferences of what we watch on Netflix or what we wear or who we go out with. These are all guided by the daemon. As the soul descended into the body of the daemon and bound itself, then the soul would start becoming a composite. It would be an experience that existed in the world. And here we see the first justification for the notion that the daemon can be identified in an astrological chart. Because as the soul descends down and then enters the womb and then moves out of the womb into the world at the moment that it's born, then the daemon appears spontaneously with it, represented by the planets in the chart and how the planets are above the horizon, below the horizon, and interacting with each other. Yes?
So does that mean a daemon would only be present for womb-based births?
Oh, that's a great question. I am going to say no. And historically, if you go back in time, you find that cities, villages, towns, mountains, countries all have tutelary deities, which are daemons. And then as we proceed through the conversation tonight, I'm going to use a city as an example of that and show you what its daemon is. And I think you guys will all agree with me that this particular city's daemon is present.
Question online, could you calculate your own bad daemon and use a sigil to subdue it?
I would totally think that is in the realm of experimental possibility. Have not done that myself. I mean, that's totally fascinating. I might go home and do that. Oh, I'm sorry, that's totally fascinating. I might go home and do that. That sounds like a lot of fun. So here we see our first justification for the notion of the daemon being identified in an astrology chart. Iamblichus himself suggests, though, that the entirety of the chart is the daemon. The great current living astrologer Rob Hand furthers this notion by suggesting that the daemon is seen by taking the chart from the lot of spirit as the ascendant of the chart. And that if you draw up the astrology chart that way, you will see your daemon and how your daemon functions in the world and what it's trying to pull into. Further on, or furthermore, then Rob Hand says that the final third of a person's life is governed by the daemon as much as someone has actualized it within their experience.
So can someone still identify the daemon if they don't have the information to find it in chart?
The question was, can someone identify their daemon if they don't have the information to find it in their chart? Does that mean you don't have your chart?
I have my chart, but I'm just saying for maybe someone who wouldn't have that type of information.
Who might not know their time of birth,
Yeah.
per se? That's a really interesting question. And again, like, you know, in the Thelemic tradition, there's other ways of talking with your daemon. So you don't just have to go through astrology. And if you can't nail down your astrology chart, that might be one way to go. Also, though, I do believe that if you worked on it, you could rectify your chart into such a condition that you could connect with your daemon. Rectifying the chart, meaning looking at your progressions, your transits, your solar arc directions, and after a little bit of work, coming up with a more precise, probable time of birth and mythology for what your birth time was. Online question.
First, a comment on that last question. There is a huge difference between finding your daemon's name or characteristics through astrology and what we call knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian.
Yes, yeah.
Which is the goal of most ceremonial magic, and that's way beyond. Now you can go and do that. Your angel will tell you its name, and you can go from there. Maybe you can reverse engineer it and try to find that exact birth time or something.
So then Steve was saying for the audience that there's a huge difference between ceremonial magic, gaining conversation with the holy guardian daemon, receiving a name from it, versus the astrological methodologies that we're going to be talking about here, or finding the name through the astrology chart through the methods of Agrippa, which is another process that will not be presented tonight. And that's absolutely true. And it really goes to show that what the daemon is very subtle, because you can, like per se, if you're going to find that position in a chart or that name in a chart, you could use it or find it through the Hebrew language. You can find it through the Sanskrit language. You can find it through Latin. You can find it through English. And so which name is true? Like that becomes just a huge debate. Or if you have a ceremonial magic invocation and the name is passed on to you, then is that the true name if it's different than in your astrology chart? And so what the daemon is a very intimate personal experience that one should lean into through the course of one's life. And as you lean into it, then you will know, you will experience what is true for you within that context from all the different schools and traditions that will describe ways to connect with and interact with it. At least that's my opinion. Other people might have other opinions. For example, the personal daemon, far from being a mere symbolic reflection of one's inner nature, functions as an active intermediary, enabling the practitioner to engage in theurgical practices, ritual actions designed to invoke and interact with divine powers. By integrating rigorous ritual and devout practice into the pursuit of spiritual transformation, Iamblichus not only made the divine more accessible, but also bridged the gap between the material and philosophically transcendent, which is where Plotinus was coming from. His approach thus provided a practical methodology for cultivating an intimate, ongoing relationship with the divine, marking a significant evolution in the concept of personal spirituality. Marzio of Ficino, the philosopher, priest, magician, and astrologer, who served the Medicis in the 14th century Italy, wrote in his 3 books on life, expanding upon the importance of astrology in harmonizing the soul and psychology to attain spiritual balance through the discovery of the personal daemon. In chapter 23, he explained that everyone born with a sound mind has a heaven-sent task to perform in their life. This task is guided by the daemon. In other words, your purpose in life is guided by your daemon, and should you do it well, then you start to experience bliss and joy in the context of your life. And if you do not do it well, then you start to experiencing depressive mental and emotional states as a result, which is super fascinating when you think about American culture's reliance on Prozac to avoid depression, because of how many people have lives that they don't feel fulfilled by. He explains the task is guided by the daemon. He states that Platonists taught that each person at birth is given a daemon that acts as a guardian and is assigned to a star or planet. Furthermore, he says whoever learns about this planet and how it works in the chart and employs it will be led to the work most natural to him or her and her daemon. By cultivating that talent within one's being, one will live a happy and successful life. If one avoids calling of this daemon, then one's life will not be fulfilling and one will suffer through depressive experiences. Ficino himself was not clear on the method of finding the daemon in the chart. He proposed a few different methods which might be used. One of the methods he proposed was from Firmicus Maternus, that the daemon was indicated by the planet that ruled the sign the moon moved into after birth. So if you're born with your moon in Libra, then your daemon would be Mars, because Scorpio follows Libra. And as the moon moves into it, then Mars would be assigned to you, according to the tradition of Firmicus Maternus. The second was called the Chaldean method and was the planet ruling the part of fortune. So if your part of fortune fell in Aries, then again, Mars would be your daemon. Also, the 11th house in astrology from the time of Greek astrology was called the house of the good daemon. So it's possible that whichever planet rules your 11th house, per se, if that was Jupiter, then Jupiter would be your daemon. Neither of these provided the satisfactory results or enough detail in integrating the idea that the daemon was a composite of the whole of the chart as one incarnated. They did not acknowledge that the entirety of the chart must be imprinted upon the soul at the moment of its birth to express the nature of the daemon.
I have a question about, you referenced the planet fortune. What do you mean by that?
So then the question is, I referenced the part of fortune. What do I mean by that? We will get to that in a few slides. It is the Jewish polymath Abraham ibn Ezra, the astrologer, philosopher, poet, and biblical commentator who lived from 1089 to 1167 AD, who gave us the most comprehensive method of finding the daemon in the chart, which is a method I am going to share with you today. Ibn Ezra used the Almatin figurus, or the ruler of the figure, the ruler of the chart, to name or to find the planet in particular that was the nature of the soul, its purpose of incarnation, and hence its value in life and its daemon. He thought if we could understand this nature, we would be able to achieve true spiritual oneness and the ascendance of the soul, breaking free of the bonds of the matter that binds us to this world through the work of our purpose. You can find his methods in the Book of Reason and the Beginning of Wisdom. In a modern context, we live in a world where mystery has been robbed from us by mediated corporations and their constant bombardment of advertisement. One might say it is our task to bring back the magical and the creative into the world, to cherish and to nurture it, to bring its mystery back into our lives. And thus, for all of us, there is a certain type of psychological health and wholeness that can be found by engaging in the quest of finding the daemon through whichever methods one is attracted to or pursues. Even the idea of the guardian daemon, a spirit you can communicate with directly, who is in fact assigned to you at the moment of your birth as a gift from the divine to lead you back into the experience of your blissful state of wholeness and functionality, and to give you a sense of fulfillment in the world, is quite in the face of modern capitalism and modern consumption. It's a mysterious and tantalizing idea. But we have to consider that maybe the daemon's always been there, that it's speaking to us through our own thoughts, that it reaches to us through manifesting symbols, omens, chance encounters, conversations, voices that we hear randomly at odd times on occasion, leading our minds like a set of eyes following a bouncing ball at a karaoke sing-along, leading us towards our own sense of wholeness if we're but willing to listen. But to listen, then we have to be connected to the idea to begin with. If we can examine this daemon of ours through a planet, it gives us a symbolic meditation to understand who we are and what our purpose is. From a modern perspective, Jung integrated the idea of the daemon into a principle of psychological wholeness. While Carl Gustav Jung never adopted the term daemon as a formal part of his analytical psychological process, his writings did influence how people thought about it. His work resonates deeply with the ancient notion of a personal guiding spirit. He said in Memories, Dreams, in his book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, that he was overpowered by his daemon himself, which led him into actions that could be conceived of as ruthless to accomplish his life's purpose. He apologized for those actions, saying, "I was led by my daemon into doing that." Jung's concept of the self, the regulating center of the psyche, parallels the function of the daemon and its role as a unifying, transcendent presence that compels the individual towards wholeness at all costs. And in his autobiographical and visionary writings, included in the Red Book, Jung described encounters with inner figures and spiritual realities that guides, challenged, and instructed his ego, a dynamic reminiscence of the ancient daemon guiding one's moral and intellectual life, as referenced by Iamblichus. For Jung, these autonomous inner presences are not mere illusions, but manifestations of the deep psyche, representing both personal and transpersonal archetypal energies that were to be integrated and brought forth into the world. Furthermore, Jung emphasis on individuation, the process of integrating consciousness and unconsciousness aspects of the personality, bears a resemblance to the role of the daemon in Neoplatonic traditions, where the guiding spirit draws a person towards their highest potential, just as the daemon mediates between mortal and divine realms. Jung believed that certain archetypal images mediate between the ego and the collective unconscious, carrying messages from a deeper unifying source. One can achieve, then, he thought, a more profound sense of purpose and balance through dream work, active imagination, and engaging with this inner figure of the daemon. In this light, Jung's psychology can be viewed as a modernizing of the daemonic concept, reframing it as a dynamic interplay between the conscious self and the autonomous power of archetypal wisdom within, outside of the context of esoteric ritual magic. Western esotericism, yes?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that I was just going to comment. That sounds a lot more like the experience with the North Node to me.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of makes sense with having K2 as having like the negative daemon, but maybe I'm jumping ahead.
That's a, so then the comment is that sounds more like the North Node, Rahu, and then the negative daemon or the evil daemon would be the South Node. I don't think that in evolutionary astrology the South Node is looked on as evil, but I understand the context because it holds us back into our historic process, whether it's from a previous lifetime or from our youth and childhood, and prevents us from evolving towards our purpose, which is found in the North Node. So I definitely understand where you're coming from there, and that's totally a view that's workable and worth exploring. Finding the daemon in the astrology chart is a more gentle gateway to exploring the idea of your personal daemon. However, Western esotericism has developed many techniques for contacting one's holy guardian daemon, especially known as the famous Abramelin operations of the Thelemic school, as popularized by Gabriel Mathers. However, this is, again, a whole entirely different process. This meditation and ritual invocation is advanced, can be very grueling, diligent, and it can be sometimes dangerous too. It is a profound method, though, of opening one's psyche and soul up to communicating with non-human spirits and receiving direct spiritual transmissions. Finding the daemon in the chart. The method that I'm going to be using, as I said, is from Ibn Ezra, and it's called Finding the Almudebet, or Finding the Almaton of the Soul. I learned it from Bernadette Brady. It is different from taking the ascendant from the lot of the daemon, which is another point one can use for the daemon, as Robert Hand has proposed. I discussed that briefly in my last lecture at Dark Star Magic Bookshop in Portland, Oregon, and you can get a hold of Steve, the owner of Dark Star Magic, if you want to hear that conversation. In the method, In that method, one meditates on the Daemon as the entirety of the chart, read from the lot of the Daemon and the ascendant, and then where the planets fall, give descriptions about how the Daemon functions in life. My practical experience as a consulting astrologer, both this method of finding the almatin of the soul and the method of taking the chart from the lot of the Daemon both work in describing how the soul moves forward into the experience of the Daemon. And I might add that from an evolutionary astrological experience, I would 100% agree that the serpent nodes also give information on that path. Finding the almatin of the soul. To do so, then what we're going to do is understand, first we have to find these 5 pinnacle positions within the astrology chart: the sun, the moon, the ascendant, the part of fortune, and the prenatal syzygy. Now, why these 5 points? These are the points in the astrology chart that represent your spirit and soul incarnating into the chart. The sun and the moon, being the main luminaries, represent the light and energy of the soul and the spirit. The ascendant, being unique to when you were born and how the horizon was crossing the zodiac at that time, represents how you are bonded into matter. The part of the fortune represents how that spirit and light of the sun and the moon, combining with being bonded into matter by the ascendant, manifests in where it does. And the prenatal syzygy, this kind of really relates into, in my opinion, the idea that souls incarnate in groups or batches with the new and the full moon, which is a Platonic idea that can be found in the myth of Error. The part of fortune itself is found by measuring the degrees from the sun to the moon and adding that to the ascendant if you're born during the day. If you're born at night, then you measure the distance from the moon to the sun and you add that to the ascendant. The part of fortune is commonly found in astrology charts. And let's see if I can point to it here. Oops, sorry. I can't use a pointer there, but it's the cross circle up there under the sign of Aries next to the sun, in between the sun and Mercury, the glyph for the sun and Mercury at the top of the chart.
You said that's on most astrology charts.
Yeah, you can, like, if you use almost any astrology program, you can pull up the part of fortune. Or it could be called the lot of fortune. And typically it represents the material sustenance that you're born with or that is given to you in the world. So then one thing you can do is you can use that as the ascendant, move that to the position of the ascendant and turn the chart. And then that indicates the childhood, because as a child, you're given something from the world. And that is what the part of fortune indicates. It's what is given to you. And then the ascendant itself would be what you experience through your own will or effort as you form a personality that goes out into the world. And that would measure the middle third of your life. And then the lot of the Daemon, which is taken as the opposite from the part of fortune, would be your spiritual works culminating at the end of your life when you begin to move back into spirit. That's a bit of an aside. So then the syzygy is either the full or the new moon before you're born. Then what you need to do is you need to add the dignity scores, which is a point system of 1 through 5. And the rulership gets 5, exaltation gets 4 points, triplicity rulers gets 3 points, the term rulers gets 2 points.
Syzygy is the full moon before you're born, or the new moon?
The full or new moon before you're born. And then the face ruler gets 1 point.
Face ruler? The face, would that be the ascendant of that moon?
No. That's a different concept. And again, you can find this in pretty much all astrology programs, traditional astrology programs.
The face ruler?
Yeah, the face ruler.
It's just called the face
Yeah.
Of what? Is that of your natal chart or is that?
Yeah, that will be in your natal chart. It's a subdivision within the natal chart. So then you'll need to add these dignity scores, which is a point system of 1 through 5, and I'll show you how that's done here in just a second. Each planet in the area of the zodiac where these points are found. Add these together using the Egyptian terms. And for triplicity lords, use the daytime sect ruler if the chart's a day ruler, and the nighttime sect ruler for a night chart. Again, your software is going to do all of this. You can do this easily also online at astroseek.com for free if you don't want to buy software.
Do you know if Astrocantus offers this?
I do not know. I have not used that. What's
I
the
do
name?
know that Eric has on his website, theurgic.com, where you can do the same thing, you can calculate.
Yeah. So Eric also has it on ornamency.com how to calculate the name. I'm not sure he has how to calculate the planet. So
I'm not sure.
yeah, this presentation's on calculating the planet, but on ornamency.com, you can find how to calculate the name in Hebrew.
You said astroseek.com.
Astroseek.com, yeah, which is probably like, if you're getting into astrology, astroseek.com is not probably, it is definitely the most useful website for you to explore and
And
learn.
it's astro-seek.
Yes, astroseek.com. It has everything of all traditions. The guy who's crafted it is a total genius, and he doesn't charge for anything. It like really makes all astrology software redundant. Okay, so now I hope you guys are ready for some long, detailed, and boring technical astrology, because that's what we're going to do to calculate the great and famous artist Max Ernst's holy guardian Daemon planet, or the planet symbolic of his Daemon. So here we see the dignity table for the sculptor and painter Max Ernst. Then we're going to find here, Then we're going to find here, this is the syzygy before he was born. So then before he was, 7 days before he was born, there was a full moon at 4 degrees Libra. I'm going to go back here and look at his chart just really quickly. And then you can see that, let's see. I don't know if you can see it that clearly. Let's see. Recently used. But the moon is there in Capricorn, 14 degrees Capricorn. And if you move back 7 days, then it's going to be at Libra. So he was born on a quarter moon, which will always put that, halfway between the full moon and the new moon, in the sign halfway between the full moon and the new moon. So syzygy is a point of the full moon or new moon before you were born. In the following chart, there was a full moon 7 days before Max was born at 5 degrees Leo. So then if we look at that, we start adding the points up from the different places. And per se, we get, for the position of the moon, you get 5 points for Venus, 5 points for Mars, and 5 points for Saturn. I'm going to just scoot back here and show you how this rolls. So here's the moon. Saturn is under rulership, so that's 5 points. Venus gets 3 points for triplicity and 2 points for term. And then Mars gets 4 points for exaltation and 1 point for face, which is how we come to that 555 as calculated in the table. Do you want me to go through each of those, or do you guys get the idea?
I'm still not sure what the face is. That's not the ascendant. It's something else, but it is.
Yeah.
Oh, was I late? I missed that part.
What's that? No.
I'm looking on Astros. Just pulled up my chart, I check. I don't see anything about fixed.
So in traditional astrology, face is a 10-degree subdivision. Sometimes it's called the deacons. So maybe you've heard of the deacons. Sorry about that. I learned it from Bernadette Brady as face, and that was about 20 years ago. And the deacons have become extremely popular in the last 5 to 10 years. So the language has shifted. I apologize for not translating that. So then, are you guys all good with how the point system works?
So the top one is for the new moon and the bottom is for the full moon?
No, so then, the top one is just where the moon is at the moment of birth.
Okay.
Then where the sun is at the moment of birth. Let's go here. Okay, where the sun is at the moment of birth, where the ascendant is at the moment of birth, where the part of fortune is at the moment of birth. And then the syzygy would be either the new moon or the full moon, which is sometimes referred to as the prevention before one's birth. Then you add those up and you come out and you see what you get. And right here, we're getting the sun at 17 with 17 points, starting to be the leader for the lot of for the planet signifying or representing the holy guardian daemon in the chart. When adding the points, the method is that the face gets 1 point, terms get 2 points, triplicity gets 3 points, exaltation gets 4 points, and rulership gets 5 points. You ignore the condition of detriment and fall. They just zero out. You don't add in any negative numbers for them in this methodology. We also do not score, we do not count the outer planets within this method because it comes from, like the 10th century and we didn't really have the outer planets. I haven't seen anybody do any work to include the outer planets. It's a very kind of like interesting thing that someone could explore. Wanted. So then, for example, in Max Ernst's chart, Venus gets 5 points for the moon, 5 points, 3 points for the ascendant, and 5 points from the syzygy, giving Venus a score of 13 points. That is not a lot of points for someone who is an artist, and one might imagine that the holy guardian daemon for famous artists would be Venus, but it's not. So let's look further and see how this all comes together then. What we do next is we add points for the houses. So if a planet appears in the first house, it gets 12 points, 10th house, 11 points, 7th house, 10 points, 4th house, 9 points. Those are the angular planets. So the reason those are scoring higher is because they're considered drivers of the soul. So they get more points. They have more force or impact on how a soul experiences life. If you have a 10th house sun, that's much more powerful than a 6th house sun in terms of your ability to affect the world around you. Then the succeedant houses, what are called the succeedant houses, are the 11th house, 5th house, 2nd house, and 9th house. 11th house, 5th house, 2nd house, and 8th house. The 8th house is going to get less points than the 9th house because the 8th house is considered very weak, since it is a house that commonly has to do with death and debility. Finally, the cadent houses, the final third of houses, are the 9th house, the 3rd house, 12th house, and the 6th house, and those get very few points within their calculation. If we add those in for max, then we'll look here and we'll see that the moon's getting 9 points. Just quickly to illustrate. Where are you? Oh, there we go. Okay, just quickly to illustrate, the moon is getting 9 points because it is in the 7th house. We go back here, then we see that the 7th house gives 10 points. Oh, the moon should get 10 points. I was off by one there. So that would give the total 16. What we see if we add all of these up together is that the sun is now at 28 points, clearly being the planet that wins, for being the symbol, planetary symbol for the holy guardian daemon. Any questions on that? Like,
Eclipses factor in at all?
no, except for an eclipse is going to be a lunar event, a full moon or a new moon.
So if it's,
So it would be represented by the syzygy, which is really interesting because we have Donald Trump's chart coming up, and he was born on an eclipse.
I'm kind of confused. So like and not, maybe I'm just not grasping the point system, but like, I thought that we were paying attention to the dignities.
Yes,
And then in this chart, with this point system, we're talking about all these planets. Is that just they're getting point? I'm
yeah, they're getting
confused where-
points because of the dignities they have in those particular positions. So then to go back here, so then again, like if you look at the sun, you'll see that the sun here, Mars, falls into rulership of the sun, because for our artist here, Max Ernst, he was born during Aries, and Mars rules Aries.
Okay.
So then Mars gets 5 points for the sun. And then if we come back here, then we will see that indeed we're going to give Mars 5 points right here. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm
Yeah.
curious, do you have a clear, like, file for the dignity table, or is there a place that I could find it to?
I will have one up on my website
Okay.
within before the end of the weekend. I hope to have it up by Friday.
Because it sounds like we would just, like, for our own charts, plug this information into that
Yes.
table, and that's how you determine.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it.
And then what I'm going to put on my website is I'm going to put up a worksheet. So it will also just give you this, and then you just write in the numbers. It's going to make it super easy.
Got it. That makes it a lot more clear. And what is your website?
www.artastrology.com, and I'll have the name up at the end too.
Art Astrology, one word.
Yeah, yep.
Word or
Chart.
Art.
Yeah.
Oh, parts.
Should have named it hard. HEARTASTROLOGY.com.
So you could also find your dignities on AstroSeek.
Yes, yeah, you can do the whole point system. But the reason why I'm going to put it all in a downloadable PDF is because I want, like, it explains the numbers rather than you having to remember the numbers from this lecture.
And I love a good worksheet.
And yeah, we all love good
And
worksheets.
then
Yeah.
Also, you were describing like the angular houses. You said that the drivers of like the soul.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what was it's split into thirds. So you have angular houses and then cadent. What's the
The middle one is succeedent.
Okay.
You know, a kind of a general thing to know is that angular houses, those planets will do things by themselves, for themselves. Succeedent houses, those planets want to work with someone else to create their effect. And then cadent houses, those planets want to serve. So then that's why you get more points with the angular houses. Another kind of reasoning of that is because those are the planets that are going to drive. And so like a very strong soul is going to be driven to do things if it has like a sun on the ascendant or a sun in the 10th house.
My son is in the 10th.
Ah, nice. You're lucky.
A couple of questions. Does your website have the basics of astrology and all this point calculation?
In various blog posts, have fun looking around. So then the end result. Let's see where. We see that the sun, like a galloping horse pulling a chariot through the sky, led by Apollo, has taken the lead. The sun is an expression of needing to conquer and dominate, to rule and to innovate, as the almaton of the soul, or the planet representing the guardian daemon. Finally, we also look to see if the planet is the ruler of the day or the hour before we're done. And so here, then you have different planets that rule the days. Those are easy to know because their days of the week are named after them in various languages. And then you have different planets that rule the hours through the day and the night. These also you can have calculated for you at astro-seek.com, or you can have a widget on your phone if you want to download, or you can look it up. But the hours change rather rapidly throughout the day. But those are also put into the calculations. And so we add the day and the hour, and we still get the sun as the guardian daemon planet of Max Ernst. It is the planet that signifies his guardian daemon, as you've seen through this method of calculation, because it has scored the most points of the system. Now, what do you do with that information? Like, once you find out what your guardian daemon is, what do you do? In general, the very nature of the planet indicates how to approach and align yourself with that daemon. You can add to this the theurgic interdependence of that planet through invoking various deities associated with that planet, various symbols, eating foods associated with that planet, wearing clothes associated with that planet, listening to music that you would associate with that planet, partaking of herbs, tinctures, medicines, and creating art, and such as poetry or paintings, to start invoking that experience into your life once you find out what that planet is, and then having a resonant conversation with that planet through those methodologies. Moon and Venus is a daemon that is ruled by the sensual, or expresses itself through the sensual. It expresses itself through carnal experience. The moon and Venus will show a person who abides in their spiritual path by enjoying life, playing, cultivating compassion and love, wishing joy for others. This is a path of love. If you have this, and then your daemon wants you to be on a path of love, a path of perhaps sensual love. It is a person who can find spiritual fulfillment through creative arts, through sensuality, and through the pursuit of the sensual. This soul is going to be particularly suited for the left-hand path and Tantra as it relates to pleasure. The Sun and the Mars shows a person who loves battle. They love conquering. They love expressing themselves through dominating and creating unique things and ideas so that everybody knows it was them. Everybody's looking to them. They possess a daemon who is fierce and wrathful. With the Sun emphasized, it is about creating and generating something completely new, developing an entourage, and transforming everything so it revolves around their idea. With Mars emphasized, it is more about meeting others through debate, conflict, overcoming obstacles, and experiencing passion until exhaustion. This person then will find their daemon through exertion and will be attracted to the left-hand path as it expresses itself individually in a way that goes against the grain of society. It reminds me of a little story Chogyam Trungpa would tell about the left-hand path. And it's like in an esoteric bookstore like Dark Star Magic, like the left-hand path has to be something on people's minds as a topic. And Chogyam Trungpa was teaching a bunch of hippies in the 70s in ways that were, quite controversial. But in order to really get his students on the left-hand path, he made them go work at banks and institutions, because that is what was against their culture. He was like, you need to break through your culture, and that would be the point. So I suppose that, that's kind of what one might find with someone who's ruled by the Sun and Mars. They're going to do something that breaks from their culture. And it's an interesting thing to contemplate, because you could be thinking you're being edgy, but you're really just staying within your culture. You're not challenging your own concepts and experiences and moving past them in a way that is aggressive. So then you have to contemplate, like, how do I break my concepts about things? Not how do I reaffirm my concepts about things. If you're really going to, in my opinion, practice the left-hand path. Again, that's my opinion. Jupiter and Mercury, as the guardian daemon in the chart, show a love of knowledge and learning. They find wisdom through the study of scriptures and will be prone to finding their daemon through the study of philosophy, learning everything there is to know about the world. It is a daemon that is hungry intellectually. They will need to understand the world. They will need to explore the world. They will need to have conversations about it. They will need to like travel in order to fulfill their daemon. It's a positive outlook that sees the good in the world that becomes very important for them. So the Mercury has a little bit of an edge in being more trickstery and playful, but both of those daemons want to see the world as a net good in the end. For Saturn, then the daemon is contemplative. Saturn makes one who is deeply esoteric and hermetic as its daemon. This could lend to the practice of magic. It can lend to the practice of silence. It could lend to the practice of esoteric philosophy. They will find their daemon through rituals done at night, through self-abnegation, through rituals that require fasting, through enduring through challenges and difficulties to break through into the deep silence of the soul. They may withdraw from society to pursue their spiritual path. They will also be able to find their daemon through worship and through service of the spiritual. Someone has Saturn as their guardian daemon, then even though it's dangerous, if you have the right teachers, go ahead and try the works of Abraham Merlin, because you want that deep experience. You need that deep experience to find your soul. You need to break through all boundaries into solitude and silence of the soul. This is a placement that heavily emphasizes service and faith to deity. After you have determined the ruling planet, examine the house it's in, the house it rules, the ways it's impeded, and how it's brought into fruition through its aspects to other planets. Then we will look at how that functions within a chart. Now we will look at how that functions within a chart. And the first chart we'll do is Max Ernst. That's a little bit, that is better. Okay, so the sun is the planet symbolizing his guardian daemon. It's up in the 10th house. So his daemon wanted him to work within the world. His daemon wanted him to do something within the world. It's squared by the moon. So then, because it's squared by the moon, it has a tension with, or it's held back by the feminine in his life. That moon's in the 7th house. It's held back by the attraction to the feminine as a partner within his life. That square creates a tension within his own fulfillment. But being in the 10th house in Aries, his sun as a daemon absolutely needs him to introduce something completely new and novel into the world for his soul's path and perfection. Now, Max Ernst was, he lived a very difficult life. He lived through World War I. He fought, he saw a lot of people die. It really kind of tripped him out. It really changed him. He was born in Germany, was an artist his whole life. And he was considered a visionary founder of the Surrealist art movement. He would pursue expressing his visions from in painting through dreams, and try to communicate the deep inner being or soul of his experience through his artwork. And this was novel. He broke traditions. Peggy Guggenheim of the Guggenheim Museum, and just absolutely famous collector of art, was his third wife. And then right here, what we have is a painting of the sun and the forest. This is from 1931. He did a number of these in different styles: the sun and the forest, or the sun behind cliffs or rocks. And as I contemplated, I started thinking about how, even though he was a very famous artist and he did create this whole new way of seeing the world called surrealist art, he was perhaps in some ways inhibited by his relationships from fully expressing his daemon, because he didn't necessarily like pull off being the center of attention. He didn't pull off being like Dali pulled off being the center of attention. Max Ernst was a lot more kind of like, here's my work, I'm going to keep producing, but then he would retreat into his relationships. And so I think that's symbolic of the moon sun square that's within his chart. His life was not entirely pleasant. It was subject to numerous upheavals. He had to move multiple times. His wife's had affairs on him. And so he sacrificed quite a lot of his daemon to the urges of Eros, represented by the moon. The next chart here is President Jimmy Carter. If you go through the calculations, Jimmy Carter's daemon is the planet Saturn. Now, I believe that Jimmy Carter actually really, totally, completely fulfilled his daemon. Not because he became president, but because Saturn, being in the second house in Scorpio, a transformation of values, is the ruler of carpenters. And so he set himself to being a deeply spiritual human being who found fulfillment by building houses as an act of service to the world. And to me, that was what his daemon was calling for. His fate had him become president of the United States. I mean, his chart's actually really, really fascinating. Like you see Pluto up in the 10th house, exactly trying a moon here. And then as this moon was aspected, I think by perfection, I forget which one, I'd have to look about it. I wrote a blog post about it. He ended up going into a nuclear reactor that was in partial meltdown, being dropped into it in order to pull it out of meltdown and getting exposed to 100,000 times more radiation than is considered safe or allowable today. Like the guy was a real hero. And it was that sense of self-sacrifice that Saturn as the daemon presents that comes through within that chart that propels him in that way. So when you're considering how the daemon is gonna work in your chart, you also want to consider the houses it rules. Again, for Jimmy Carter, it rules the 4th house. Saturn rules Capricorn. Capricorn being in the 4th house then is the creation of structure, the creation of building. It also rules the 5th house, and one of the most remarkable and amazing things about Jimmy Carter was his lifelong romance with his wife, Rosalind Carter. And so then that's also seen within the context of the chart, that experience. Another thing that'll be noticed here, since you brought up the nodes, is that taking on a role of leadership from the perspective of the nodes was soul growth and soul movement fulfillment for him.
It's an online question. How does one sacrifice their daemon? It's referred to.
A great question. Online question. How does one sacrifice their daemon? By not listening to it. By, rather than following its impulses and what it is compelling you to do, falling back into areas of comfort where you don't have to acknowledge it for reasons of material survivability. So, for example, if you're an artist and you're having a hard time making a living, but your daemon is compelling you to make art, and then you're like, you know what, I just can't live in this broken studio where cockroaches crawl out of the sink in order to make my masterpiece. I'm going to go get a job as an insurance agent. You have left the path of your daemon if your daemon's path is to drive you towards art and fulfillment of the art. and then your soul starts to like recede. That's when I think, that's why I think that depression is so endemic within our society, that there are not many people who are following their path of the Daemon.
Well,
So-
in that kind of context, wouldn't it also be said that like our society doesn't leave room for people where their daemon might lead them? Like in the fact of an artist, for instance, like you said, like our society does not really value that.
Yeah, so the question is, in that context, does our society not value the path of the Daemon? Does it not value people living fulfilling lives in the context of their soul? I would suggest that capitalism values your ability to make money for someone else who has more capital than you, not your path of the Daemon. And we are living in a capitalist society. You can run with that however you want, but I would suggest strongly that that is actually the case. Although I don't think that's necessarily entirely different from multitudes of civilizations that have preceded us following different paths, such as feudalism or, you know, or whatever they called it when they were working in Mesopotamia, and most people were churning beer and carrying stones, not, you know, in the temples invoking gods and daemons. So it's, you know, it's part of the human condition. And one of the things that Iamblichus says, which is really interesting, it's like so interesting, it's he was advised by his teachers that 10% of humans incarnate as spiritually awakened heroes who are fully integrated with their daemon, and as such they're there to lead the breadcrumbs for souls to find their way to that experience and state. And then after that, another 15-20%, I forget the exact number, are awoken to that they have a daemon, they have a calling, and it is for them to pursue that into the experience of fulfillment. And then the remainder are, you know, what Gurdjieff might be calling automatons, people who are asleep, people who are not awake to the fact that they have a soul. Even if they go to a church that says they have a soul, they're not understanding the immediacy of their own experience within that context. And then so for them, you know, it's just really hard to connect with that. But I would imagine that everybody on this call and in this bookstore, and probably everybody who walks into this bookstore, is someone who is awakened to that they have a soul and that their soul has a calling and wants to know more about that. But then there's, you know, like all kinds of people out there in the world. What's that?
Not every seed sprouts.
Not every seed sprouts. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting idea. Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. And I wonder if that's like, as we propel through the age of information, where so much of this can be found online now and then shared, if that's part of the disruptive event horizon that we are going through as a culture and a society, that more and more people are waking up to, that they have a soul and they want to experience fulfillment of that soul, and then grasping out why are they not. Yeah, very, very Pluto and Aquarius, absolutely. Yeah, and also, you know, it's yeah, it's just, it seems like we're in an evolutionary moment, which Pluto and Aquarius, yeah. Okay, so then the next chart is Donald Trump, and I just want guesses to what signifies his daemon. If anybody wants to guess which planet it is before we roll on. Yes, he is a Gemini. Yeah.
Yes.
Saturn. Oh, what's that?
The sun or Mars.
The sun or Mars? Yes. Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
the sun.
Yeah. If you said the sun, you win. Yeah, and I agree with the sun. Like, the guy just loves opulence. He loves royalty. He loves thinking that he is a king, which is the sun. The Mars daemon is going to identify more with the warrior. I mean, he did kind of get like a little bit off his jollies when he got shot and stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. So, you know, that was kind of a warrior thing. But that was also the sun as a daemon. That was also like, I'm gonna be aggressive. I'm going to conquer. I'm going to win. I'm going to take over everything. And as you can see, he was born during an eclipse. As he was born during that eclipse, the sun was conjunct the North Node in Gemini. And so we have Donald Trump. He's a divisive ruler. His Daemon is divisive by nature. And I think this is really an interesting thing philosophically, because the Daemon concept moves into this idea that the world soul has its own function. And I myself, as a liberal living in Portland, might not agree with the world soul's function. Right now, the world soul's function, or at least the soul of America's function, is to have this guy as the head doing whatever he's doing. And I do believe that if you look at the sun and consider the sun as his guardian daemon in his chart, he is living it to its fullest. Even if I don't like that, even if that makes me uncomfortable as a Portland liberal, you know. And so it's interesting to conceive of or to contemplate the idea that the machinations of the world soul, of humanity as a whole, and of humanity's karma does not necessarily imply what is peaceful and soothing to a liberal mindset.
How are you determining the world soul? Is that like the draconic, would that be the draconic chart? Or are you talking about like the planet itself, or like the soul of humanity?
The question was, how do I determine the world soul? Is that the draconic chart? No, I'm not talking about the draconic chart. I am talking about humanity itself, the whole of humanity.
Yeah, wouldn't that line up then with the draconic?
I do not know enough about the draconic chart methodology to talk about that. Yeah, I have not explored the draconic chart enough to talk eloquently on that.
That's tricky. We just had a draconic reset, by the way, so it might be timely.
You know what? I will. Yeah, I have looked into it before. I just haven't studied under someone and fully come to understand that methodology or the philosophy behind it.
It's basically like humanity's future, like as a whole.
Yeah,
Like,
but
we
how
all
does
line up.
what's that?
We all line up.
We all line up and
Draconic, it resets the North Node to the first, or to 0 degree Aries.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Chart,
yeah.
and realigns the chart to that.
Yeah.
And that's supposed to be sort of like the higher division of yourself. And then that's kind of where everyone syncs up.
Beautiful.
So,
Yeah, very, very beautiful. Yeah, I know the draconic chart is gaining popularity as a field of study within astrology, and I definitely encourage anybody who's interested to learn more about it, because it seems to be providing a lot of insight for people. The sun rules the first house in his chart, and again, his Daemon's purpose is to aggressively then be about him and his ideas and put those in charge, which he pursues very successfully because he has Mars ruled by the sun, conjunct his ascendant, conjunct Regalis. And that's why he just has this force which overwhelms people no matter how much resistance there is. It's, you know, he has a very fascinating chart in that way. Apollo's conjunct the ascendant, Regalis is conjunct the ascendant, and Regalis as a star comes with the warning that you will be immaculately successful in all of your endeavors as long as you do not seek revenge. It's a very old warning, and this guy seeks revenge like to the utmost and is doing so now. So I'm just curious to see whether this kind of old axiom about Regalis really plays out or not, because right now he looks indestructible within his own path towards fulfilling his Daemon.
He's protected spiritually.
Yeah, it seems that way.
I told everybody when all the witches were hexing him in his first term, I was like, don't do it. It's not gonna work.
Yeah, he's strong. Okay, so next is the city of Portland, and I'm presenting this because the Agathoshe, or cities themselves, have a chart of the Daemon. I looked up the chart for the day that Portland was incorporated. I took the noon time for the incorporation, which is a very common practice. And then I rectify it going back historically and found the time that worked and matched up even with the riots last year. So does anybody want to guess what the Daimon of Portland is? That was too quick.
Portland already had this conversation, so.
Yes.
Venus.
Yeah. So the Daimon of the city of Portland is Venus. Cities also have daemons. They can be found throughout the astrology chart and are very interesting to study in terms of the spirit of a town itself, in terms of like working with that spirit and knowing whether that spirit of that town is appropriate for you. Will your daemon match with that city's daemon? Will you be able to pursue your own paths in this way? So Portland's daemon is Venus in Scorpio. Venus ruling the 9th house, a town of philosophy and spiritual knowledge, which is why, Steve, I think that your esoteric conference is going to go exceptionally well, because that Venus is in the 9th house. It wants to have esoteric experience. I mean, it's
And
ruled by Scorpio.
Portland attracts people who are into esoteric arts.
Yes.
And it was interesting, one of the most amazing magicians I've ever met, a local guy named Pablo. Some may know them. He and I were once talking, and he said, the city of Portland is the Empress card in the tarot,
Yeah.
which is the embodiment of Venus. He said, if people that move here with a creative ambition and they do well here.
Yeah.
People who move here who are against that tend not to do well.
Yep.
And I've seen that play out time and time again since we had that conversation like 20 years ago.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I identified Venus.
With Venus. That conversation, that's excellent.
That was like a no-brainer.
So Venus also rules Taurus in the 4th, and that's the sensual home, but also the peaceful home. Of course, Scorpio and Venus, drugs, sex, whiskey and beer and partying and like just, indulging in sensual pleasures. And I don't think anybody thinks that Portland isn't a city of sensual pleasure. It is just delightful in that way.
Strip club capital.
Strip club capital of America. Yes. Yeah. Also, I don't know if it still is, but for a long time, it was a microbrew capital of America. Yeah. So then the using the Daemon as a planet. So then, as mentioned before, you can align yourself with the Daemon through the planet's primary principles, which have been put forth. You can also associate it with deities. An easy entrance to do this, if you're just kind of like engaging in it for the first time, looking into it, trying to get into it, is through reciting the Orphic hymns that embody that particular deity. That's tapping into a 2,500-year-old tradition, which is still extremely potent. I'm not sure if that tradition is unbroken, like in some small eddies of Europe or Greece. But if you read the Orphic hymns on the proper day for your Daemon, you are going to get a response. It's going to be very clear. Like that is something that's just like, I guarantee it. It will come through your dreams. It will come in waking reality, waking experiences. It might take a little bit to kick in, or it might happen within an hour or two. On that context, though, or from that context, all traditions, most esoteric traditions have deities, angels, or spirits that you can deduce the planet from which they embody. I'm a Tibetan Buddhist, so then there's Tibetan deities, and I'd go to my teacher and I'd be like, well, is this deity Venus? Is Kurokule or Tara Venus? And they'll be like, no association whatsoever. But then, like you play around with it and you start doing stuff on the day or the hour of Venus with that deity, and there is some kind of symbiosis, and true with angels also, true with the other deities. So then please, like, once you have found your daemonic planet, find the deity in your tradition that you associate with that and start playing with it and watch the symbols of the planet arise in your life and how they lead you. And that is the path to discovery, that finding your guardian daemon as a planet in the chart leads you on and brings you towards. And with that, then this conversation is over. Are there any questions? Yeah.
Can you go a little bit more into the eclipses and how that might affect the point system?
Eclipses do not affect the point system. I will note, though, that a planet on the node does seem to signify a very strong drive in terms of a person's daemon. Both Jimmy Carter and Trump had planets on the nodes. For Trump, they were their luminaries, and you can see he's just an overwhelming force. I don't think anybody would say that Jimmy Carter was an overwhelming force, but he did become a president of the United States of America, and he did live an extremely fulfilling life, and he died practically a saint, if not a saint. If he wasn't a saint in name, he was definitely one in embodiment.
So you said planet on a node signifies like
A strong soul force that's coming into the experience of the native and propelling them to accomplish something deeply transformative within their life and within the world around them.
thank you.
Yeah, I would assume the North Node would add more to that, anything that is conjuncted, or conversely, the South Node would detract from a planet. Maybe with that.
Yeah. So then, does the South Node subtract from that? Usually, a planet conjunct the South Node doesn't subtract from it. It just creates a force that has to be reconciled before that soul can move towards its ultimate fulfillment. Reconciled and integrated.
I thought you said that, like because when I asked about the eclipse initially, you said no, unless it happens on the eclipse or lunar something, and then that would be demonstrated in Trump's chart.
Oh yeah, so not entirely sure what I said, but yeah, the sun is conjunct the North Node, and so then Trump was born actually right before the eclipse. And so there's like, I could have gone to the previous lunation in building his points, but because he was born within a few hours of the eclipse, a few hours of the syzygy, then my feeling, the way I interpret that, the way I work with it in calculating the chart, is he was drawn in, like his soul was drawn into that eclipse in the moment of that eclipse, giving him tremendous personal power, for sure.
So you don't see that as a negative, that more as a force of that adds to. I mean, maybe Trump's case it seems to have, but there are tons of people born on eclipses, and yeah, like you see that as adding to their purposefulness, not something that is more malefic.
So then the question is that malefic if you're born during eclipse, or does that add to the purpose? I think that's a real kind of I think it's intense. Is it malefic? That's going to be a moral judgment call. Like, I think there's a lot of people out there right now feeling like Trump is malefic from a moral judgment perspective. But does it mean that he has the power to fulfill his daemon's purpose? Absolutely. I think that's part of what's going on within his chart.
I might be a little rusty in this, but I feel like I've read or listened to I don't know, discussions about how eclipses, I kind of like related to kingship historically, especially when kingship was seen as more of like a kind of indication that you have like God's blessing to rule, and you then represent, like, that's what you're like bestowed upon that king, is to like rule his people, and it's more of like, was that
He dies, right?
yeah, or like, well, it's somehow it's kind of like related to like the cycle of the kingship. It's am I
Right.
off base with that?
So then the question is, are eclipses related to the cycle of the kingship? If someone was born during eclipse, do they have a more favorable destiny towards kingship? If an eclipse occurs, is it an omen of the death of a king? All of that is found in historical astrological context. The Babylonian astrologers kept, it was some 1,200 years of tablets marking what would happen and prophesizing what would happen to kings, to rulers because of eclipses, and to armies, and what rituals could be done to avert like the more difficult portents from those eclipses. So yeah, eclipses have a lot to do with that type of power. However, yeah, like probably every eclipse, like I don't know, like some million, well, maybe not a million, some 100,000 people are born. They don't all become kings, but do they all become kings of their own little domain, terrorizing their wives and kids? Maybe, that's impossible.
Sense of rulership in their life.
With some sense of rulership, yeah.
So you're gonna put up a worksheet, but do you think if I have an okay grasp on AstroSeek and that I could hypothetically figure this out?
Absolutely, yeah. And if you have, that terribly in demand and absolutely necessary skill for modern life of being able to type into Google, you're gonna find all your resources so quickly at this point.
I'm not like the most knowledgeable on astrology, but I'm familiar with AstroSeeks and a lot of this makes sense.
Yeah, cool. Good. Yeah, have fun.
Very HGA motivated.
So, question online here. If someone is following their daemon for wickedness, is that their bad daemon? If it's their good daemon, could be sigils against.
Well, so someone says if someone's following their daemon for wickedness, is that their bad daemon? If could they use sigils against their good daemon to really get into the juice and the spirit of their bad daemon? I would say that that's a moral judgment call, and I'm not going to judge someone's path. I would say though that the technique that I just showed is for finding the planet that represents the genius daemon that leads you towards the Platonic sense of the good, or integration and wholeness. If you wanted to find the name of the bad daemon, then I would suggest at this point you go to arnemancy.com, ARNEMANCY.com, and go to his daemon name generator. And then on it, he has several links which will lead toward how you calculate the bad daemon. Because I don't think his site will calculate that for you. He makes it a little hard to get to that. What? Yeah. You did? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions, thoughts, comments, disagreements, debates?
Oh, well, comment about the eclipse thing again. That I think it also makes a difference if it's a solar or lunar eclipse. Also happen, just as you mentioned, is that would be significant.
Oh, for sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like also more interesting, complicated process. But I have a question about, you said it was the point that's opposite the part of fortune.
The part of the daemon, a lot of daemon,
Okay.
a lot of spirit, it's commonly called. Yes. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Amazing. That helps to hear it. That name.
In that name, yes, a lot of spirit. It was a lot of the daemon.
Yeah, and that comes. You said that comes into play later on in life as a fulfillment of life's work.
Yeah. So Rob Hand proposed that a few years ago, and I played around with that and found it very workable within client readings. So if you're an astrologer, it's definitely something to experiment with in terms of delineating and reading.
Does that usually come into play after like Chiron's return, or is there like another sort of life transit that is generally associated with the actual activated, or we just do more of like the releasing methods?
When I heard him present it, and then when I had a conversation with him about it briefly, none of that, it wasn't mentioned whether it comes after the Chiron return. It wasn't necessarily mentioned as coming from a particular releasing period. I would say that if you go through the 3 term rulers of the Lord of the Ascendant by order of the sect term ruler, the out of sect term ruler, and the participating term ruler. The participating term ruler represents the final third of life. And so when that term ruler kicks in, which you can kind of tell by the quality of an experience's life, a person's life, and how that shifts, then that would be when you'd move into that lot of the Daemon as being the ruler. That was very technical.
Yeah, you just
I
slipped
apologize.
over my head. I requested a class.
We got one more question online here. How can personal demons as holy guardian angels relate to archangels? Gabriel, Michael.
So how does a personal daemon that's found in the planet represented by that's found in the astrology chart represented by a planet relate to archangels such as Michael or Gabriel? Each of the archangels is associated with the planet, one of the 7 traditional planets. Therefore, find that planet, find that archangel, and start doing the work and see if that helps you form the connection. Yes.
If we wanted to learn more about this subject,
Mhm.
obviously your site and Eric's site are good resources. What
Mhm.
would you recommend for reading?
For reading on this subject. Oh gosh, I would just hit Google. What's that? The 3 books of occult philosophy. Yeah.
Which book? Because I've read through the entire first one and I'm curious.
No, the first one, I think it'd be the 3rd.
Celestial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where it really starts getting to.
I would also then, in that context of looking at books, I'd read the 3rd chapter of Marcio Ficino's 3 books on life. Those are a little bit like, they're a little bit different. Marcio Ficino is a lot more about kind of like, he was a lot more, I think, under the thumb, perhaps. Maybe, no, that's not the right way to say it. His book is a lot more experiential versus formulaic. I think Agrippa gets very formulaic.
This last question here, can daemons be contacted through Enochian magic? Yes.
So then the last question, can daemons be contacted through Enochian magic? And then Steve says yes. That is Steve's specialty, and Steve needs to be up here sometimes teaching these methodologies.
That's an Enochian magic question.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you found it illuminating on some level.
Also, instead of Google, you can also use ChatGPT.
Oh.
That works, surprisingly.
Yeah. ChatGPT, you might want to random spot check with Google.
Yeah, they'll connect it.
Yeah.
I'm boycotting that. Do you guys have any idea what it does to our
Okay.
environment?
Do.
It eats so many of our resources. It's like sucking up all of our water just to like run that stuff. Yeah. Also, I'm in Northern Virginia and I went to visit recently for the first time in 8 years, and the entire area is just made up of data centers.
Oh, wow.
Does every AI thing do
Yeah,
that?
it's
Oh my God. Why does everything so useful have to be so destructive?
Because nobody knows how to strike a moderate balance. Capitalism everything.
True.
They just had a thing, Sam Altman. I think that's an office with Trump. When the federal government's using 500 billion. So
And in addition to that, you should just keep Anyway, sorry to be so.
Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you, that was really
Yeah,
interesting.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much.
That was so good.
Was it good?
Think it was really bad.
Yours?
Yeah.
Okay, if you like. Let me know ahead of time so I can send you a discount.
Sorry, what was that?
Let me know ahead of time so I can send you a coupon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna book it, so you can send it to me.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will do. I'll do that today. Yeah. Thank you. Good to see you.
You have to look them up on the internet.
Yeah, right.
No, they come in.
I kind of got that.
Yeah, right. I think it had something to do, I think it had something